Arts Therapy, Deconstructing the Practice, with Glenda Needs.
So let's talk about media, the qualities of media. It is interesting for us as individuals to have had all of the experience that we've probably had both as artists and as students with exploring different media, to actually range from painting to drawing to charcoal work to collage and so on. And that breadth of experience is really important. I think it's also important for us to stop a while and pay attention to what that actually means, that experience that we have with each of those materials. And that experience speaks of our own personal preferences, of our own experience. It also speaks to what it is that we are trying to create. I'm going to ask you to think about this. If a client came to you with a very large and dark secret that they felt they did not have permission to share, and yet it was troubling for them, and they came to you for some assistance in being able to manage this notion that they have this secret that they can't share. Now, whether or not that's a reality and whether or not in the end this secret does end up being shared is irrelevant. At this point, I want you to just think about what that client has presented. I don't think for a minute any of you would put an A2 giant sheet of paper on the wall and give her charcoal to represent that. I think probably you all have an innate sense that that would not be helpful, that this huge dark secret that is not hers to tell would spread, that some of the secret would fall on the floor, that it would get up her arms and under her fingernails, that she wouldn't be able to escape it, and that in some way it would slip off the page and perhaps onto the wall or onto the easel. And that in some ways what would happen is this secret that she so needs to keep contained would become uncontained. I think you probably have an innate sense that that's probably not a helpful thing to do. What I want to do is to ask you to think about what it is in concrete terms is happening here. And if we consider that the material is actually an extension or a metaphor for her own felt sense, then we would know that any of the material falling away is she's not able to control or contain. And in terms of her secret, that would be quite challenging for her to think that there were parts of it that would fall away that she couldn't contain. I think the idea that this dark secret would get caught up in under her fingernails and up her arm as well, this idea that the darkness actually can't be contained, that it's contaminating her, that also is part of that metaphoric experience. And when we think about qualities of media in terms of how they respond when we work with them, we can start to understand how the experience of the client can either be mirrored in the materials, or we can actually use the materials to help subtly shift that, either to challenge their predominant way of being with the problem, or to actually help them feel a greater sense of management of it. In this instance, I would be giving a client a small piece of paper. I would actually be giving her something like markers. Sure, she may need something that's very dark, but I would be giving her something that is well within her control, not too big that she feels overwhelmed by it, and giving her the opportunity, at least in the initial phases, to keep that secret contained and under her control. If we think more critically about this, we can recognise that whenever a client comes in, they come with some sort of explanation that's often embedded in a sensory experience. They talk about being stuck with a problem, being out of control. They may speak about something being hazy or unclear. They may come in feeling very rigid about something. And if we stop and listen to the sensory metaphors that they use, then we can think about what would be a material, a medium, that would most accurately convey this sensory response to the problem. And then if we are in the witnessing phases of therapy, we can use that material to help foster that sense of really demonstrating what this problem is like. Now, a client might say, oh, that's a really yucky material. And I might say, is that something that you feel about this problem or this situation? Does that mean that this material really resonates with that experience for you? Ideally, that's what we want, a solid resonance with what it is being created in the witnessing phase. As we move through, though, we might try more and more to use the material to exercise a certain sensory response to the problem. An example of this might be where, and a very obvious example might be where you have someone who has an obsessive compulsive disorder who doesn't like getting their hands dirty. Of course, in the initial phases of therapy, you're not going to be starting with using dirty materials. You may want to hear what the problem is like for her, but you know that if you use really dirty materials, that's going to create a problem. So you're thinking about this individual client, how they present. Maybe actually they're going to start using very contained, clean materials, smaller pieces of paper, maybe even bordered pieces of paper to keep it safe. And then as you're progressing through therapy, you may be applying really a little bit of exposure therapy by using slightly messier materials that might leave a little bit underneath her fingernails, that might actually cause her sensory system to exercise a tolerance to that material, which actually then matches the tolerance she needs in order to achieve the goal she has for therapy. So this is, in terms of understanding qualities of media and really understanding the applicability of it to therapy, I think this is a huge, huge topic which we can really only touch on here. And in particular, when we learn to apply it to each individual presentation rather than have a standard tick box setting. Where we just go, okay, this problem presents and we're going to tick this box and use this material. I think that it can take quite some time to develop the skills to actually be able to switch on to the needs of the client in the moment, and also to understand when it's appropriate to suggest the use of certain materials and when it's appropriate to obviously allow the client to work with whatever materials they're drawn to. Don't forget that if we consistently do that, allow is not really the right word, because of course we're not going to force a client to do anything they don't want to, but where we consistently encourage a client to use whatever they want, we may actually be buying into a defence mechanism that actually helps them avoid dealing with the very materials they need to deal with in order to move past this problem. So there is a time and a place to actually apply a particular medium to the work a client's doing, and a time and a place to allow the client to simply choose and be drawn into whatever art is calling them. Very big topic, but I hope that's at least got us started thinking about it. Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you've seen, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you'd like to inquire about clinical supervision, please click on the link in the description box below. Thank you.